Tánaiste, yesterday the homeless figures rose again by 35%. There were 1,026 families with 2,110 children homeless in Dublin. And that is an increase of 48% on last October's figures, despite all the apparent efforts that are being made to provide homes for people. And none of us at all, on any side of the House, can be complacent about the homeless crisis and should make every effort to remove whatever obstacles are there that are preventing families from leaving emergency hotel accommodation. And a major part of the housing crisis is the lack of supply. And yesterday's announcement from the Central Bank is an effort to address this. As we all know and appreciate, the 20% requirement that was there was putting enormous pressure on people saving to buy a house, particularly those who are already paying extra large and exorbitant rents. The Central Bank economists themselves found that the average first-time buyer would have to have saved €64,000. But this requirement, the new requirements, will still prohibit people who own apartments from buying a modest house to accommodate a growing family, and they are the biggest losers in yesterday's announcement. But there's also a very large chance of house prices being inflated. The new rules, as you know, will allow first-time buyers to borrow any amount with a deposit of 10% if they meet the other criteria. The other criteria being 3.5 times the income of the buyer, which we accept and acknowledge, of course, is only common sense. And there's no doubt that many people across the country will be relieved at this announcement, and it will enable them possibly to get on the property ladder. However, when these new rules, are taken into conjunction with your government's initiative, that being the Help to Buy scheme, some people will only now have to acquire 5 to 10% deposit. So essentially 95% mortgages are back in town. And with a limited supply of new homes on the market at present, there is considerable risk of further house price inflation. And we all know and we all accept and we all want diggers on sites. But these initiatives on their own is a very high-risk strategy. One of the problems with the housing market is a lack of supply and too little construction. How is the government confident in giving money to potential buyers so that they can outbid each other for what there is very little to buy? How do you believe that won't inflate house prices? And with building costs still very high, how is the government assured that developers will not see this combined effort on their own as a massive opportunity on their part to go back to the future when house prices went out of proportion? So finally, Count Court, if I may, are you, Tánaiste, and your government satisfied that the €50 million allocated in the Help to Buy scheme, in combination with the new central bank regime and rules announced yesterday, will not inflate prices? And if prices do rise, if you're proven to be wrong, as the central bank governor acknowledged yesterday that he will review those new rules, if that be the case, what would you do if that be the case? Because I contend, and make no mistake about it, that will be the case. So I need to know, and we need to know, and the public needs to know. Deputy. Have you any ideas what you will do when that does happen?
Tánaiste, please.
Thank you, Deputy. You've raised two important issues: the changes to the central bank mortgage rules announced yesterday and the issue of homelessness, and I'll address both of those. Yes, we certainly welcome the changes announced by the Central Bank of Ireland yesterday to the prudential rules, which had set borrowing conditions on those seeking to take out a mortgage. This will be welcomed. We know, when you examine the figures in relation to first-time buyers in Ireland, that the percentage is far too low. This gives much-needed opportunity for those first-time buyers who have not been able to get on the ladder. It now means that they will be able to do that because of the easing of the rules. I think this will be welcomed by individuals all over Ireland. I think it is also very important to note that it will impact on supply. Let me quote what was said yesterday by Professor Lane. He said, "The 90% loan-to-value ratio limit for all first-time buyers simplifies the overall framework, with only 5% of lending permitted above this level." he said that they needed to be adjusted because they were too complicated. He also said that, of course, there is still the limit of the 3.5 times ceiling ratio on borrowing, which I believe deals with the point that you have made. He has also said that he will monitor the situation, as indeed will the government. In combination with the initiatives announced by the government, I believe that these are really welcome initiatives that dramatically, and I note the reporting from the various experts today talks about the dramatic change, a dramatic change to the mortgage lending rules in a move that is expected to lead to a surge in home building, which is precisely what is required in this country. And of course, it will be kept under review. But certainly what we need is an increase in supply, and we need first-time buyers to be able to move out of renting, where they are paying very high rents, and to be able to get the deposit together. This allows them to do that, so it's an extremely welcome change for a very hard-pressed group, and of course will be monitored. In relation to homelessness, you're well aware of the various figures. The new figures we have today are October figures. There is a slight increase, but it does show that there is a slowdown in the rate of increase, and that has to be welcomed. Of course, none of us want to see families having to go into homeless accommodation or hotel accommodation, and the Minister has made it absolutely clear that his intention is, and which I'm sure everybody here would share, that no family would have to go into a hotel accommodation, and we are working steadily to ensure that that is the situation, that will change in the beginning months and towards the middle of next year. And I would point out, the progress that has been made. Of course there is an issue. None of us want to see families in this situation. But let me point out that in 2016 there were 4,240 extra social housing units. There was 1,755 homes purchased. There were 670 built. There was 1,500 voids which were made habitable, and so on. And these are very significant figures. And we are seeing many families moving out of homelessness. But as we acknowledged as a government, there is a crisis in this situation. It is being dealt with. The plan was announced in July. It is going to take time, as the Minister himself acknowledged this morning.
Deputy Cowen.
Thank you, Cora, and thank you, Tánaiste. Your comment in relation to the homeless figures, I've been reminded of a comment Gareth Fitzgerald made one time about inflation. He said he had a decelerating rate of acceleration in the rate of inflation. That sounds somewhat similar, to say the least. But look, it's far from me to be making flippant remarks, but the seriousness of this situation, the emergency and the urgency of that problem and that crisis was sought to be resolved in the short term with the provision of modular units. 500 were promised, rapid build modular units. 500 were promised this time last year, of which there are only 22 built. I asked the question of the Minister during questions this week to make us aware of what the problems were, so as we can help and assist to make sure that doesn't happen again, or that it's resolved, whatever logjams are into place at that happening. But in relation to the comment you made about what the Governor of the Central Bank said yesterday, yes, of course they needed to be changed. They were cumbersome, they were complicated, and they were downright unfair. But the problem cannot be solved in relation to supply in isolation between that measure and the Help to Buy scheme, which, if they were allied with other measures, would be welcome and would have the desired effect. So, for example, finally, if I might, Ceann Corda, could I ask the Tánaiste, will you consider, or your government consider, for example, real supply initiatives that can help and assist and work hand in glove with those other announcements by the Central Bank and yourselves, by reducing development levies, by revamping certification costs without compromising standards like you have in the UK and the North, where it's up to 5 times less expensive than it is down here? Would you look at VAT reductions in construction costs? Would you allow the credit union into the market to allow competitive finance to be at the heart of the mortgage market?
Tánaiste.
Let me repeat to you, Deputy, that providing affordable and quality and accessible housing for our people is a priority. And you've seen that from every action of this government, both in terms of the work that Minister Coveney is doing and the plan that has been published, and indeed the delivery to date. notwithstanding that there remains a serious issue with people moving into homelessness. And, clearly a dysfunctional housing market is one of the most scarring legacies that have been left behind, indeed by the work of your own party in government and your catastrophic handling of the economy. What we've done is taken the situation, that we have been faced with and taken you haven't provided many answers yourself in relation to homelessness. Very clearly there's 320 units that have been provided already this year in terms of rapid build. Started by year end. 350 units. Yes, 650 solutions in relation to the HAP initiative, and a 40% increase in the budget in relation to housing. So there's a whole series of actions have been taken. I've acknowledged that they are beginning to work. They're going to take time. That's quite clear. They are beginning to work. Everyone across this House has as much sympathy for every family that finds themselves in this situation, Deputy, as you have. It's shared by all of us. It's a priority for us to deal with this issue. And indeed, the Minister will be making further announcements in 2 weeks in relation to the rental strategy. And we do need to be looking at alternative solutions for families who are at risk and who are entering homelessness. And those will be announced in the next